Dreams That Cannot Be, Chapter 4. I hope that's not a Les Miserables reference. I both hope and don't hope it's a Les Miserables reference. In spite of everything, I hadn't expected that in less than a fortnight we would be gathering for me to show off my progress and be assessed for it. So when I found myself in the training room with CAISSA, Veli, Jack, and CAISSA's father, among others, I struggled to believe it was happening. And I wasn't sure what the fallout would be if I failed to meet expectations. I was concerned about being murdered on the spot. I mean, hopefully in a stressful situation like that you would just teleport away accidentally like you have before, hopefully. I hoped that if it came to that the others would defend me. But I wasn't sure how much power they had to do that. I had only interacted with Karis the one time, and, well, he was terrifying. He also had bodyguards with him at all times, presumably to beat up or murder anyone that annoyed him. Even if Jack and Carrie could take them on, would they? I hoped I wouldn't find out. At any rate, the entire room went on edge the moment he arrived. Would have been nice if someone warned me he would be here, though. Or that this stupid demonstration was even happening. I'd learned about it when I arrived at the training room this morning. Though I suppose it was possible they didn't know about it either. But it was hard to imagine CAISSA wasn't aware his father would show up. I can imagine that. Just like, get a message with breakfast. I'm showing up at training today. Great. After a few moments, Veli came to where I was standing.
Relax. You look like you're about to pass out. It's not a good look if our new queen is quaking in the corner like a terrified mouse.
I'm not quaking in a corner.
We won't expect anything massive from you today. Only enough to show you're making progress. We'll have you demonstrate a psi burst. You've learned to do them pretty well already, so it should go off without a hitch.
I guess. It wasn't so much that I knew how to do them well. In a way, I didn't know how to do a psi burst at all. I knew what Veli's psi looked like when he did one. If I mimicked that, I could do a proper psi burst. Copying someone wasn't the same as doing it on my own, and it required that I mimic his psi fingerprint first. It would still get the desired outward result, but there were more steps involved, which meant more opportunities to mess up because it wasn't like I could mimic him with complete precision either. So if I failed the mimicking step, what then? I took a deep breath. You can do this. It's like another test. Except if I failed this one, I might die. Then again, failing any exam I'd ever taken felt like it might be as bad as death, or worse. So it was still almost the same thing. Hello, sir.
I'm waiting.
I was unable to stop my eyes from rolling heavenward. God, these people were whiny sometimes. I steeled myself and turned around, licking my lips when I saw that glare leveled at me. I wonder if I can do that thing where I knock a building on everyone and run. Tempting, to be sure. But for now, I figured I'd focus my efforts on the practice dummy, since I was more certain I'd actually manage that. I moved to the far end of the room, standing opposite the new dummy they'd set up. I had never done this with so many people watching, so many other Espers. I shut my eyes and tried to block out everyone but Veli. If there was one area I'd improved at least a little, it was speed. There we go, glowy eye time. I eyed the target and narrowed my eyes. My psi shone bright for a split second. Then the target shuddered and split down the middle, a mangled chunk falling to the floor. Good job, girl. Thank goodness. Behind me, Veli also let out a low breath, and I couldn't help but wonder if he'd have been reprimanded if I had made no progress. Probably. I imagined with Karis, being reprimanded involved something unpleasant. And painful. I truly hoped I never found out. And at least for today I'd been spared that. Or maybe he'd been worried about CAISSA's reputation. That generally seemed to be Veli's top concern.
I suppose it's a fair amount of progress, though I admit I expected something more. It's barely over 2 weeks, Father. And that, after living her entire life without knowing how to manipulate Psi at all. She's also learned to mimic Jack's... The cyburst I heard about before was much more impressive than what she demonstrated. Morgan was in a state of extreme panic at the time. And fairies are always driven by emotion, aren't they?
Oh no. Don't you threaten somebody just to get, like, her emotions high, Karis. This ain't it. His voice was dripping with disdain when he said that. Even though CAISSA is also F-class.
Perhaps we should put her in a state of extreme panic again.
I took an unconscious step back when he said that, my body going numb. Already there, thank you. He wasn't even an Esper, but somehow every word he spoke felt like a sharpened knife at your throat. How did he manage to be so terrifying when he was just a normal man? His lips twisted into an amused smirk at my reaction, something that sent angry heat right to the pit of my stomach. I hate this man.
You know she pulled a building down on everyone that day. Interesting as it was, I'm dead certain it was only fun to watch because I wasn't in the building at the time. Jack has a point, Father. And while it's true strong emotion may induce more impressive results than what she demonstrated, she needs to be able to utilize her abilities in a state of calm, not only emotional distress. Basing her training on the latter will prove detrimental, I believe. Oh? And what value does your belief hold, CAISSA?
CAISSA lowered his head in instant apology.
I apologize if I spoke out of place. I merely believe you've already stated what you believe. There are those who question whether leaving her in your care was the right decision. They believe if I allow you to continue coddling her, she may never be of any use to the family. Her mere presence here is of use to the family.
CAISSA's voice had dropped considerably in volume, but he lifted his head and looked his father in the eye. There was a momentary battle of wills, and I wasn't sure who would win it. But Karis was the one to back down.
I expect to see more than a destroyed training dummy in the coming months, CAISSA. Or I won't hesitate to put her in the hands of someone who can extract better results.
He shot me a stern look, then left the room flanked by his bodyguards. What's the rush, exactly? Like, what am I training for? Are we taking over, like, another family's jurisdiction or something? Are we going to war? What's happening? There was an almost physical release of tension that followed.
Well, that could have gone worse.
Veli shot him an annoyed look.
Could have gone better as well. It's enough for now. All we needed was for him to allow us to continue as we have been. There is no need to overachieve.
It was my turn to receive the classic Veli scowl. It had ceased to have much effect on me.
That, I assure you, was never even a possibility.
I deeply apologize for my lackluster performance. Next time I really will try to bring the mansion down on everyone's heads.
I want to see that. Just give me advance notice so I can position myself outside first, please.
You're close to the top of the list of people not getting a warning.
If you have time to make stupid jokes, spend it trying to improve your skills instead.
I don't think I'm quite capable of that much progress in the amount of time it takes to make a joke.
I'm not convinced you're capable of making that much progress if we give you the next decade.
Can you get off my back? I'm trying my best. No, this is my question. And we're not stubborn anyway, I don't think, right? Hold on. No. We're cautious, we're flexible, we're emotional. I know I can go outside of those things from time to time, but what is the rush? I can't help but feel like we're preparing for something here, guys. Care to fill me in? What's the rush on all this anyway? It seems like an awful lot of pressure to make progress in a short amount of time.
You mean apart from sheer impatience?
I'd like to think there was more to it than that.
Impatience, unfortunately, is a significant component. Many of my father's top advisors were against trying to bring you here. I was the sole proponent for doing so.
Interesting. Everyone else just wanted me dead. I know. Lovely people.
A hit job is almost always easier than a kidnapping. My father elected to go with my suggestion. Not a decision that was viewed favorably by some other leaders in the family.
So he gave you hell for saving her, even though he backed your decision to save her. Well, save her. Kidnap her. Bring her into the family. Okay. I mean, I get... Is his leadership, is his position kind of tenuous right now, and he, like, needs to have a show of strength? And that's why he's like, well, if I've got 2 queens, that'll be better than 1 queen. But I need it, like, yesterday, so that I can prove to everybody that I'm still a strong leader? Is that what's happening?
Now that you're here, there is a certain amount of pressure to prove it was the right decision to make.
And there are plenty of people who would love to see me fail because you're so popular.
That is a glib way of putting it, but I suppose it's more or less accurate. Regardless of that aspect, I imagine my father would also like to show you off at an upcoming event.
Ah, and the event is?
And showing off a useless queen isn't nearly as impressive as showing off one that is a valuable weapon.
So he wants to parade me around like a prize.
If that's how you wish to see it.
It's not how I wish to see it. That's how it apparently is.
Power is everything here, Miss Leone. Showing off that power helps keep Crimson at the top of the 4 families. It lets the government know to continue to keep their hands off us.
Ah, so you're at the top of the food chain. Gotcha.
And it allows Endgame to see what they've lost.
That was disgusting. And I hated being used that way. But there was no denying I was nothing more than a trophy to some of these people, or at least to the only person here who seemed to matter, regardless of whether I liked it.
I know it's not what you'd like to hear, but their goals matter very little. You're alive and safe. That's better than the alternative.
He had a point there, anyway.
You should go rest for now. I'll see you this evening.
Rest? Already? I hadn't even done much. I didn't need rest. But I was basically always exiled to my room when I wasn't otherwise needed. And trying to argue with him had never once gotten me anywhere. Fine. I can't help but feel that you're frustrated. I am. A little. Why? That went fairly well, all things considered. Mr. Fianchetto was more complimentary than usual. Ha! That was complimentary? She gave me that look, that one she reserved for when she thought I'd said something stupid. I rolled my eyes. Am I supposed to take any situation where I come out alive and with all my fingers intact as him being complimentary? He is usually hard on people. He wants to use me as a trophy, Carrie. There are worse fates. Sure, being launched into the vacuum of space is a worse fate than being used as a trophy. It doesn't mean I want to be a trophy just because it's a better alternative than death in the void. I'm not aware of anyone we've launched into space. Yet. What a relief. Morgan, it's better for him to believe you're useful than the opposite. I know that, but I still don't want to be reduced to usefulness. But isn't that what New Albion is about? Proving your merits, your usefulness? That's not what... I mean, it's different. My government isn't a criminal organization. No offense. Are you sure about that? Only because they're the ones making the laws. And even then, you think they aren't breaking any of them? There was a time I might have denied they were. But could I really say they weren't one of the groups trying to chase me down that day? I couldn't. In fact, there were several reasons why I had to acknowledge maybe they were. Arguing with you is really annoying. I hope you know that. Glad to be of service. But proving my worth here still wasn't the same as doing it there. At least there I got to choose how to prove my worth. And it wasn't a fight for survival. Though I suppose that wasn't true for everyone. For people who were pushed out of the system very early in life. They fought for survival on the daily, no doubt. Maybe not in as direct a way as it felt like I was doing here. But it was naive to think that wasn't happening in New Albion in some fashion. I didn't enjoy thinking about it. It didn't make Crimson any less of a horrible group because there were parallels, though. Even so, it was still on my mind when I went into my room a few minutes later. And stayed on my mind the rest of the afternoon. The conclusion I finally came to was that it didn't make Crimson any better. It just meant the entire world was much worse than I'd realized before. And that was a depressingly grim thought. And now we're here. What do you mean by that?
I mean what I said. I've cleared my schedule and reduced my other responsibilities so I can take a more active role in your training.
Oh? CAISSA and I were having an unexpected after-dinner discussion in his suite, and I had to admit the topic had come as a complete surprise. But why? I thought Veli and I were making good progress.
There are several reasons. But to be blunt, I'm concerned about the strategy you both described earlier today. While I think it was important for making a breakthrough in your ability to mimic others, I don't feel it's a sound strategy for learning to properly manipulate your own Psi. As Veli describes it, your only actual skill is mimicry, and you're at a complete loss how to do anything without mimicking someone else first. That isn't good enough. You have unique skills that you need to uncover. You will not get by simply from playing chameleon.
It wasn't as if what he said was wrong. That had been part of my reason for being nervous about the demonstration earlier. I crossed my arms over my chest and stared at his book collection instead of looking at him. It wasn't like he'd take my wishes into consideration anyway.
Displeased with this development.
Would it matter if I wasn't?
I suppose I should be grateful for your honesty.
At least you told me in advance instead of just showing up tomorrow. And I suppose you have a point about my progress.
Of course I do.
But I don't know why you think you'll be able to help where Veli hasn't. We're not even the same rank.
Veli is something of a prodigy. His abilities developed at a young age. And while his Psi level may have been average, his potential has always been incredibly high. He is the only N-class infantry user I've ever heard of that was able to achieve a higher rank, Queen, no less, without the use of nano-expansion.
Oh, hello. As he spoke, I picked up a small hollow photo on his shelf, of a dark-haired young man I didn't recognize and who I hadn't seen at the mansion anywhere. Is this the brother? He looks so familiar to me, and I can't figure out why. Who does he remind me of? It's like on the tip of my tongue. Oh. Oh. Hold on. Is this? He looks so much like Lance. I'm gonna have to check this after I'm done recording. But the guy at the bottom of the menu screen for Gilded Shadows, his name's Lance. This guy looks a lot like Lance. Is CAISSA's brother still alive? Oh my god. I'm so excited, guys. What if CAISSA's brother's still alive and we can romance him, guys? Guys, am I crazy? Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Okay, I need to calm down and get back into, like, what's happening here. I wonder who he is. He had far too kind of face for this place, didn't he? Oh, don't say that. Who was he that CAISSA would have a photo of him? I continued to stare down at it curiously as CAISSA spoke.
For Veli, using Psi is as natural as breathing. I believe you have pointed that out to him.
CAISSA stepped closer and took the photo from me, setting it back on the shelf. Sorry?
It's clear Veli's skill level has become a liability when trying to explain to you how to use your own Psi.
I gave him a long look at what he just said dawned on me. Wait. A nano expansion to increase Psi? That's a thing they can do?
You weren't aware of it.
I've spent a lot of time actively avoiding anything to do with Espers, as you might imagine.
For fear of discovery. I see.
Not that it did any good. I didn't realize there would be some king in Delphine that outed me.
If you'd spent more time learning about Espers, you might have been able to foresee and avoid that occurrence.
And then Crimson wouldn't have its second queen.
Indeed, we wouldn't. But it would have saved me and Jack a trip to New Albion at the very least.
I apologize for inconveniencing you that day.
Regarding the nano expansions, they are safe only for certain types and levels of infantry Espers. Though plenty of people receive illegal expansions, even if they don't qualify.
Illegal. Why doesn't that surprise me?
Perhaps because you've finally learned the world doesn't always align with the neat boundaries the Triad and Endgame try to enforce.
Regardless of what you people think, I was never naive enough to believe that. New Albion has crime too, you know. One of my brothers is a public safety officer. Do you think he'd have to be one if everyone obeyed the law?
The underbelly of this world is a darkness no one talks about when they're standing in the light, Miss Leone. The petty crime your brother deals with looks like a kindergarten, compared to the things that go on
in Delphine? I've noticed.
Not only in Delphine. I'm sure you'd like to believe all the terrible things Arcalis has to offer are isolated to our side of the planet. Experimentation, arms trafficking, human trafficking, drug cartels, and illegal nano-expansions. All these things, and more, go on right under everyone's noses in the Triad and elsewhere on your precious Dayside. Sometimes instigated by your very own government. The only difference is that here we know what sort of world we live in, and there everyone chooses to live in ignorance.
This again. This insistence that everywhere on the planet was the same, and I was some ingenue for not noticing it before now. I was already tired of hearing it. Though I could also see how, in some ways, they weren't wrong. I had certainly lived in a bubble of middle-class security in New Albion. That came with certain weak points when it came to this sort of thing. Not that I didn't know there were terrible things happening in the world, but they felt so far away. And it was easy to get wrapped up in my life. I didn't have to think about any of the things CAISSA mentioned. They had nothing to do with me, at least for much of my life. When I did think of them, it was with passing pity or frustration. And yes, now that I was in the middle of it and seeing it clearly, it was very different. But I hated this feeling of perpetually being looked down on for having different experiences than everyone else here. What I was thinking must have been written on my face. After a moment of silence, CAISSA sighed very softly.
I suppose it's fair that you wouldn't be aware of some of this given the environment in which you were raised.
It isn't as if I wasn't aware the world was darker than it appeared, or that New Albion did its best to sweep the problems under the rug. Or did you think fear of discovery was the only thing that made me want to leave this planet? He seemed surprised for a moment.
I suppose I had given little thought to the purpose behind your goals.
No kidding.
But if I expect you to admit you have much to learn, I suppose I should acknowledge you have reasons for needing to learn it.
It would be nice.
In that case, so you're able to understand the situation a little better. Psi-based expansions are heavily regulated by Endgame. There are many people who do not consider that fair, hence the illegal procedures.
Surely you're not trying to justify breaking the law because you consider it unfair.
Are you suggesting that because a law exists, it's inherently just? Human history is replete with examples of societies casting off unjust governments. Most revolutions are looked back on with admiration.
Perhaps. But sometimes revolutionists replace their government with something that was just a different type of unfair.
Do you truly want to launch into a discussion about the human inability to create a truly perfect society?
It would be more interesting than most of the other conversations I've had of late. But I suppose it's not relevant. It's not like anyone here is trying to start a revolution. Or are they? I'm like, consider the fact that CAISSA has like his own wing and his own people under him. You know? And he's trying to like build some loyalty here. Maybe there's a reason for that. I expected a retort, but he was strangely quiet in response to that. In the silence, I looked back to the bookshelf to my side, one of several in his room. It was surprising he owned this many actual books. He really did like to read, didn't he? My eyes traveled to the photo again. It was CAISSA that picked it up this time when he saw me looking at it. Who is he? Yes, Deimos, or Lance. CAISSA, do you know that your brother's still alive? Do you know that we can also date him? Do you... CAISSA, do you know?
Deimos.
Ah, the brother. I should have guessed, though they really didn't look alike at all. Ah, that makes sense.
We only share a father, and neither of us really resembles him, in looks or personality.
Well, looks-wise, you definitely look more like your dad than Deimos. Or Lance.
Deimos was more like him, I suppose. Clever, and ruthless if he needed to be, but only when he needed to be. To those he loved, he was only ever warm. My only good memories in this place are of him.
At least there are some good memories. The word slipped out before I realized. A very faint smile came to CAISSA's lips.
Yes.
I looked away quickly, eager to change the subject to something less awkward. You have a lot of books on Delphine history, including the ruins, it seems. Like the other one you gave me.
It's an intriguing subject.
I'm aware. That's the sort of thing I wanted to study, after all. I pulled one of the books out, flipping through the pages. I suddenly wondered about my test results. They should have been in by now. And I'd never know how I did. If I made it in the top 10%, they'd given my spot to someone else by now. I was probably presumed dead or something. I stared at the pages. Getting to see places like this in person. For a long time, it was my dream. And now...
This place. It's an unfortunate truth, but... this place destroys dreams, Morgan. That's how it has always been for everyone pulled into it. Or anyone born into it. My advice is to give up on whatever dreams you may have had before. It's less painful that way.
Throat constricting, I set the book back on the shelf and turned away, heading for the door. I knew that already. CAISSA didn't stop me, not until I set my hand on the knob. And he caught me by the arm. Oh? His expression was unreadable when I looked back at him. I like this nice bonding moment we're having today. It's like the first real, I don't know, conversation, getting to know each other a little bit moments. It's really nice. So what's your plan, sir? His expression was unreadable when I looked back at him.
Take this with you.
In his hand was the book on the Delphine ruins. Staring at my ceiling for the last hour hadn't improved my mood in the slightest. Sleep was proving elusive, and my mind kept replaying the earlier conversation with CAISSA. He spoke like he also had dreams he'd been required to give up on. Yeah, maybe he wasn't even supposed to have the position he's got, but his brother died, and Dad needed a new heir, and so CAISSA was it, even though he preferred Deimos, and now it's just like a really bad scene. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting. This was the sort of place you couldn't be happy in. No matter who you were, I guess. I rolled over, my gaze falling on the book I'd brought back with me. I reached out, setting my hand on the stark cover. He contradicted himself a lot, didn't he? If I should give up on my dreams, why send this back with me? He was a strange man. A lot of what he said I didn't agree with. Most of what he did I didn't agree with. But he was as much a prisoner of this place as I was. It didn't make me happy to know that. If anything, it made my own prospects seem more bleak. I rolled back over and buried my face in my pillow to chase sleep again. I just wanted to be able to not think for a while. When sleep finally came, I could only be grateful.